What do you do when you move into a new market? How do you settle in? How do you become part of the community? It's actually extremely difficult to do, and there's a lot of things that you have to get right in order to be able to do that. But eventually, over time, you'll start to be a part of the community. But what do you do when you first get into it? I talked to my friend John Moug, who I've known for years. We both started out in radio together, and we've moved a lot since we first started in Vegas, and he has settled into several markets over the course of 10 years, and I thought he would be a great person to tell you all about what he does when he first gets there, how you can not throw yourself under the bus, and what are some things that you can do to kind of become part of the community. That's what we're talking about this week on How to Radio. How many markets have you lived in?
Oh God! So I started in Vegas. I took a brief journey through Florida when I did nights out there for a few months, and then they replaced me with me back in Vegas. And I've been to Denver, San Diego, and now Boise.
What is the hardest thing about moving to a new market?
Well, you know what? I would say one of the hardest things for me, and maybe not everybody sees it this way, but as an adult, it's really hard to make friends, right? Besides friends that you naturally make through the radio station, as an adult, it's really weird. So I grew up in Vegas, and when I was doing radio in Vegas, it was easy because I had all my friends from high school. I had friends that I kind of gained as an adult, and when you go somewhere where you don't know anybody, it's really difficult to make friends, and it's, in my opinion, a lot easier for women. Like my co-host Angie, she can just walk up to women and compliment them and be like, "Oh, girl, I like your bangs," and bam, they're friends. But I tried doing the same thing, and I got punched in the face. It was horrible.
Is friends a big part of it? Because yeah, I agree. Like I've moved a couple times, and I've just stopped making friends. So, do friends make it easier?
In some regards, yes, right? Because when you go to a new market, they always tell you you want to marry the market, right? You want to go out and experience everything there is to experience in that market. And if you don't have like a crew of friends, to go out with, it makes that a little bit more difficult. Now, these days when I move, I bring my fiance with me and we go experience life together. So I guess the friends part of that is not necessarily as important as it would have been, 9 years ago when I moved to Florida, or I guess it was 6 years ago that I moved to Denver. And I was a single guy in my 20s and knew nobody, and it was like, oh, this is scary. So in terms of getting out and experiencing your market, yeah, you can go and do things alone. You can take yourself out to lunch and things like that, but there is a limit. You know what I mean? Us naturally as humans, at some point you're like, I want to do this stuff with somebody else.
So, what did you do in Denver, like alone? Did you do anything when you were before you made friends?
In Denver, I was this weird recluse that lived in my apartment. I had my first ever, like I said, I grew up in Vegas, so I had my first ever winter. And anytime it snowed, I was intimidated to even leave the house. So I would leave for work, and then I would order like food for like delivery and stuff. And I would just try not to leave those first several months because I got there in the wintertime. And and I think I just developed these habits of, I just stay home, and that's kind of who I am in Denver. And there wasn't really anybody around my age at the radio station. I had my co-host Jamie there, who was great. But other than her, there was nobody really my age that I could kind of hang with, and so it was just me and her kind of against the world in that situation.
Do you think that hindered your job performance by staying at home?
Yes, actually, and I will say that there is a homesickness that you get when you take off. And um, let's go back to 2011. I got my first gig in well, I was already in Vegas, but my first gig outside of Vegas was nights in Florida, in Tampa. And my boss at the time at KLUC, Cat Thomas, said, "Look, you're going to go out there, and in the first 3 months, you are going to be miserable. You are going to be homesick." He's like, "You just got to look past it and get through it, because if you wait it out, great things will happen." And I think you know looking back, there were some things I didn't really like about that job, but I blamed a lot of things on that job, and I looked for reasons to get out, and I fed into that homesickness, and I bailed. And I went back to Las Vegas, and in the grand scheme of things, that was a good move for me to go back to Vegas at the time. I ended up in Denver, in in a similar situation where I was feeling really homesick, and I couldn't wait to get back to Vegas. I was in Denver for about a year, and and then they let me go, and I went back to Vegas again. But when I went to San Diego, I had my fiance, well, now fiance Stacy, with me, and the homesickness thing just wasn't really a thing anymore. And now I've been gone for almost 3 years out of Vegas, and so I don't feel that way at all. I think I'm disconnected enough from, you know, the comfort of being able to go out to eat with my friends and do all those things that I used to do. My lifestyle has changed so drastically in the last few years that I just, there's no part of that anymore.
All right, so let's get into how we do settle into a new market. So now you're in Boise and you've got your fiance and things like that. So what's the first thing you do when you move to a new market? Like what's on your to-do list, the top of the list?
Well, I like to eat. So the first thing that I do when I get to a new market is go, okay, well, where's the best Mexican food? By the way, I moved here from San Diego. So it was a tall order to find a good Mexican place. There's a taco place that I love, that I will give a lot of credit to. It feels very authentic. But I would say I start with the food. But I think it is very true when people say you need to marry the market. You need to get to know the market. You need to understand the lingo of the market. And so one of the first things I did is I sat down with our traffic guy and I was like, "Can you please tell me anything that I may, mess up in terms of pronunciations, or not just pronunciations, but how people refer to things here, right? Like in Vegas, there were very specific ways that, people called the I-1595 interchange the spaghetti bowl. And if, and there's a portion of the freeway there called the Charleston Curve. And if you were coming there from somewhere else, you wouldn't know that. You would just be like, I was on the 95 freeway. You know what I mean? And so when I got here, I was like, hey man, can you tell me what is this, Karcher construction zone that you speak of all the time in your traffic report? Can you tell me what that is? Are there really only two freeways here? You know what I mean? Um, I think that you need to really invest in learning what the lingo is in your market. You know what I mean? And I think those are the food and the lingo would be the first two things in my opinion.
And I think I'd add on to that, you have to let go of your old lingo as well, because again, like you, I'm from Vegas, and we called things the 95, the 15. And if you live outside of Vegas and California, they just call it I-95 and I-15. It's just a weirded. So you can out yourself by not changing your own lingo too.
Yeah, 100%. You can out yourself as not sounding like a local. And, it's a tricky thing, right? Because when you go into a new market, there are a lot of people who go, look, I'm from blah, blah, blah. I'm brand new. Let's embrace that. I always try and take a more balanced approach. And I learned this in San Diego that, look, the average listener in Boise, they don't, if you're brand new, they don't care where you're from. They don't care any at that point, they don't have any investment in you, right? So it's this balance of you want to speak their language so that they don't feel like you're an outsider, but you also don't want to lie and pretend that you grew up there and just popped up one day on the radio.
Got the food down, you know where you're going. You know how to pronounce stuff. What's the next thing that you do when settling into a new market?
You got to get out and meet people. You got to get out and meet the people that listen to your radio station. And by the way, I started here in January. COVID really took force in March, so I had about 2 months that I was here before everything shut down, and we stopped doing remotes and all those things, and so it really um, took quite a toll on our ability to get out and meet people. And there were a few moments in the spring where we were able to go and meet some people here or there. When we started looking at the fall book, we went, look, we got a brand new show. We've got a radio station that is a great, a massive heritage radio station here in the market. But we need to tell people that we exist and that this radio station is still here. And so we went, how are we going to do this? We got to get out and meet people. We got together with a local pizza spot, Idaho Pizza Company, and we decided we're going to put our masks and gloves on every week, and we're going to take pizza to different people's offices and meet people that way. Old school lunch drops. There's no reason you can't do that in COVID-19. You're taking pizza, you're not opening the boxes or breathing on it, you're taking it straight to people, making a bunch of noise in that manner. We take our station van out and just drive it around and honk the horn at people. And really, our goal right now is to gain cume and let people know that one, our show exists, and also that our station is still a very prominent place on the map.
So you've been there for about 10 months. How do you feel that you've settled into Boise?
I guess I feel completely at home. First off, it was a little bit alarming when I got here because most of my life has been spent in Las Vegas and in San Diego. And it's not a thing that's wrong with either of those places. But if you ask anybody who grew up in Vegas, and you can probably attest to this, was one of those things where you don't know your neighbors, right? Here, people are so friendly, and at first, it was a little bit jarring. Again, this is coming from the guy who just a couple of minutes ago was complaining that it's hard to make friends,
Yeah.
and we got here, and the neighbors, they want to come knock on your door. They want to come introduce themselves. They want to bring you food, and so it was really one of those things where it was a little bit like, wow, this is so different that it's a blessing and a curse. You go somewhere and you want to buy food, and the curse part of it is the person that's in front of you is going to talk to the cashier for an hour. And then when you get up there, the blessing is that they're really polite and they'll chat with you for a while. You know what I mean? And so because um I felt like the people were here were so polite and so friendly. It made it so much easier of an adjustment. And yeah, it's been less than a year, but I guess I feel like, more quickly than ever, I have felt at home here, and I really like it here. I like the speed of it. I before was so obsessed with market size, and who knows, maybe one day that'll be my mind frame again. But right now, I'm just having so much fun in this smaller, slower paced place, where people are a little bit more friendly.
Other than not getting out like you did in Denver, what common mistakes do you think people make when they move to a new market?
I think one of the most common mistakes that people make is they come to a new market and too quickly assume that people care, or that people love them. And um and and by that I mean getting on the air your first day and going, let me tell you, I just moved here from San Diego, and out there they had the best Mexican food. I want to know who's got the best Mexican food here. On a random Tuesday, somebody who is a native or somebody who's lived here for a long time, their concern isn't necessarily who has the best Mexican food. They want to know what's going on in the world. And I think that the best thing you can do, and you have to find the right balance in the beginning, is to make sure that your content caters to your listener. There's a very important storytelling element, especially when you're doing a morning show. There's a very important storytelling element in making sure that you share your life with somebody, but you have to balance it, right? You have to give them little bits and pieces at a time while also catering to the content that they really care about because they're not invested in you yet. But if you just come out the gate and it's a show that's all about you and your personal life, um, it's going to be hard for people to attach to that. I think eventually they will, right? It's radio. There's no perfect right or wrong answer. But in my opinion, you have to find a balance of, here's the content that you're coming here for and that you care about, and here's a little bit of me so that you can get to know me as well. And I think the mistake that people make sometimes is assuming too early on that people care about you. By the way, I've made that mistake several times in this job, in the beginning, in past jobs. I think it's something that everybody naturally kind of does.
Especially coming off an old show where people did care about you. You come in and you go, oh, this is just the same show. And it feels like you're talking to the same people. And then you have to go, oh, that's right. You guys don't know who the hell I am.
Right. Right.
So, how long do you think it takes for a market to recognize who you are and understand you?
That I don't think that there is a perfect answer to that question. I think that a lot of that is dependent on how much you get out and make yourself a part of the community. I think a lot of that is dependent on how much your station allows your show to promote itself. And I think it also depends on your chemistry with your partner and your ability to connect to your listeners. So look, it's not an overnight process, I'll tell you that. Very rarely does the old worst to first situation happen. And I think that you really have to give it a year or 2 years before, people at mass will really love your show.
How do you promote your show, and how do you go about that?
So, for me, I'm really lucky at the station that I'm at now that they are willing to promote the show on the station throughout the day. And I think that that's key. I think it's important. I also think that you have to do it at the right time. I don't think you jump right out the gate with promos running every hour through the day. I think you need to fine tune your show and get it to a point where you're confident in the material. Because if you promote your show and you have a ton of funny clips with zingers to get you out, but then they come to your show and it's kind of a mess and it's not really prepared yet, that could be a detriment. And also creating promos, it's not just about making promos, it's about making promos that will make people want to come back and listen to you more. And so you gotta be very careful with how you promote your show. Tracy Johnson talks a lot about promos and teasers, and he always says, the best thing that you can do is to share clips of something that happened on the show that were, funny or that carried some sort of emotion with them, right? That were impactful. That those are 10 times better than any teaser that you may run throughout the day. Hey, tomorrow at 7:20 we have blah 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 tickets. That's great, but showing what actually happens on your show is more effective. And you know once you get your show to a place where you're confident that if you promote that show they're going to come, and at any point in that show when they tune in they're going to have an entertaining show, I think that you should promote it. We're very lucky on our show that we have promos that run throughout the day. Every hour going into that second stop set is a promo for our show. um, I'm lucky to have a co-host who I have incredible chemistry with, and so we have a lot of funny moments that I feel are promo worthy. So we have a ton of promos on a rotator, and as soon as I start to feel like they're getting burned at all, I take them out, I replace them with new ones. Um, and so having, particularly funny promos to promote your show, I think is key. And looking at this, I'll look at the rotator and I'll go, okay, one, two, three, four. Which ones are going to run in afternoon drive? Because I want to make sure that no matter what, that those are on point. I mean, they should be on point. If they're going to make it into your promo
Yeah.
rotator, they should be on point any time of the day. But having something to go, hey, this is a commercial for our show, and it's great and it's fun and will make people laugh all times a day, I think will bring people back.
I think the only problem I would see in that, I mean, I agree with you, but like, what have you ever had any pushback from your bosses? Like, yeah, sure, you think this is a good idea, but promo inventory is important to a lot of PDs that don't want to promote the show. Like, how do you get past something like that?
Yeah, and you know what? I don't have a great answer for that. I've been in situations before where I thought we had an incredible show, and and there was no promotion for it. They said eventually we'll run promos for your show, but not now, not now. Hey, get some together. Let's hear what they'll sound like, and maybe we'll do that. So I did. Not now, not now. And in that experience, I we didn't get the traction I felt like we deserved based on the show that we were putting out there, because it wasn't being promoted at all. We were doing the best show that we could from 6 to 10 a.m., but then we didn't exist after that. And now we are, I think, connecting with this audience here in Boise a lot quicker because we are running promos. And I think that you have to make your case. And maybe that's the mistake that I never fought for that in the previous gig that I'm talking about, that I never said, no, we need to run promos and promote this show, because now that I'm seeing a much faster response from listeners who are taking to the show, and a much more emotional response. People who are saying, I love your show. I mean, I've been here for 10 months and there is a lot more people saying, I love your show. I love your show. I love your show than in my previous situations. So I think that you have to plead your case. And yeah, maybe there's not always promo inventory, but are you running promos for things that aren't necessarily important? Maybe if you have a good morning show, you should prioritize promoting them throughout the rest of the day.
So tell me about once you get into the market, you're there. I know you probably haven't had the chance here in Boise, but um, charity events, things that you can be relatable to, or things that are yours that help you own the market. How do you do something like that?
One thing I got to say, as somebody who is engaged to a psychologist, which I'm very lucky that she's, with a radio guy.
Yeah.
um, One thing that I've really learned is you need to find ways to really connect with somebody, right? You have to find ways to hit every emotion on the spectrum. You have to make people laugh. You have to make people cry, maybe make them scared. You know what I mean? Maybe you put together a spooky Halloween special. I don't know, but you need to find ways to hit every emotion on the spectrum with people, and it's so easy to do funny. A lot of radio shows can do funny. I think charity events are great opportunities for you to find other emotions to connect with listeners on. And the first example I'm going to throw your way, and we haven't done much here. I will say we did a shoe drive here with the Boys and Girls Club, and it was incredibly successful. And it was a great event, and we made a lot of kids happy. And especially in a year when money isn't floating around perhaps like it normally is. An example I'm going to point out is, and you know where I'm going with this, Nick. Uh, Chet at KLUC in Vegas, Toy Drive, which is massive. I think everybody in radio knows about it, and if you don't, it's something really you should look up. KLUC's Chet Buchanan Show Toy Drive in Vegas, and if you want to talk about an event that connects with people on an emotional level, that's it. I mean, we're not talking a toy drive where it's like, hey guys, we're come on down and drop off a toy. This is something Chet does an incredible job at connecting with people emotionally, sharing stories of people who have had an incredibly tough year and don't know how they're going to provide for their kids for Christmas. I think that those things, charity events, can really, really show your audience a different angle on who you are.
When do I get to the point of bits? Like there's bits, there's features. How important are they to establishing yourself in a new market?
What's interesting, if you talk to different consultants, they'll tell you different things. I've had people say, look, they have to know who you are and really get to love you before they'll care about your benchmarks. And then I've had people tell me, look, you got to have great benchmarks that entertain people, and in them they can get to know you. And I kind of roll with the latter on that. I think that you need to have a balance of benchmarks and games and fun things that you can use to subtly share who you are, and to also identify, that you're local, that you're in their market. And so I think that benchmarks are very important. I have a feature that I run um, 3 times a day in the 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 8 o'clock hours. Um, we have games that we play multiple times a week, and I think that those are very important with connecting to listeners, giving them things to look forward to, giving them things to remember, to talk about that happened on your show.
How can we get in touch with you if we have any questions, or if we need to, maybe we move to Boise and we need to make friends and they're stuck at home single? Like, how do they connect with you?
If you move to Boise and you need to make friends, I'm right there with you. At John Moug on everything, JOHNMOUG. My show pages are Moug and Angie, MOUG and Angie. Would love to connect. I love talking to radio people. I've been new in several different markets. I've had great successes, and I've had some great failures too. And I think I'm proud of all of them. It's not easy when you start off in a new market, because you want to picture yourself as what it's going to be like when you're the 20-year morning person. You know what I mean? You want to picture what that great success is going to be like, but nobody shows the struggle that it takes to get to that point. And you have to start somewhere. And sometimes you start building, and then you get kicked off the ledge and you got to start all over. And I think it's those that commit that have success, you know?
Hopefully you enjoyed this video and you got something out of it. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe, and you can hit, of course, the little bell so that you'll be alerted every time I post, which is every Thursday at 11. Don't forget to follow me and my wife, who do a live morning show on Twitch Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Pacific Coast time. And then, of course, you can follow me on Instagram if you have any questions or ever want to reach out, or if there's a subject that you want me to cover. Thanks for watching.